Okay, in a few days, I'll be in the South in Florida hitting up all the major parks getting a bunch of credits. But before I go, I want to talk about some of the coasters down there and what I think of them, giving you guys my thoughts on them before I go and ride them. Kinda like what I did with the Fury video. Now, you might have gotten a little clickbaited because I did title this about Gwazi and Velocicoaster, but instead of making a bunch of separate videos talking about all the juicy credits down south, I'm deciding to make one big video talking about all the notable coasters. I want to start with the veggies of the coasters, and then we'll work our way up to the meat and potatoes of the coasters. So, let's finally get into it. Starting this list off is Hollywood Rip Ride Rocket, and this just seems to be one of the most polarizing coasters in the entire community. I mean, some claim it's rough, some say it's glass smooth, others say it has no forces, while some claim it does have forces. Nevertheless, I think it'll be fun to listen to music while you ride a roller coaster, and also, this thing is just so fun to meme. With its like 200 different block zones and lift hill that's steeper than the actual drop. Tigris will be our first skyrocket too, and this seems like one of the better clones in the community right now, and I'm quite excited to actually get on one. The inversion looks crazy and the launches look decent, but this non-inverting loop looks much better than, well, yeah. I must say, I don't think it'll be the best Premier Rides coaster we get on though. This seems to be a great number 3 in the park, right behind Mako and Kraken. I could even see it being better than Kraken. While I'm not very familiar with the layout at all, the quad launch definitely looks cool, and those little pops of airtime in between every launch also look great. While the layout does look pretty short, this does seem like a great addition to the park, and a great family coaster nonetheless. Okay, so those are basically the appetizers of Florida. Let's get into some of the higher tier coasters. So this is going to be my first dive coaster, and while I'm pretty excited to try it out, I cannot deny that it definitely looks like a one and done, and the fact that it's totally a one trick pony. After that first drop, the coaster just looks fun with the swooping turns and that cool splashdown. Okay, I haven't been on a flying coaster since 2019 with Superman Ultimate Flight, and this thing is constantly being praised as one of the most beautiful coasters ever built. And I'm definitely excited to try it out. This is no doubt better than Superman and has quite the fun looking layout with the pretzel loop and inline twist. Montu looks absolutely insane. I can't really tell if it'll overtake Afterburn or my favorite invert, but this just looks nuts. The trenches and the Batwing look incredible, and all the inversions look executed with insane amounts of whip. The only thing working against this coaster for me is the horrible dead spot it has mid-ride. Other than that, I'm all for Montu being a freaking insane ride. This coaster also seems to be super polarizing, as people say that it has a really bad rattle, and it might get removed soon, and it's super cookie cutter, but I'm here for the positives. Literally. Not really knowing anything about this layout, I'm totally down for a mid-90s classic B&M looper. From what people say, this is an intensity monster and has some killer elements. I hear that Cobra Roll and that Zero G Roll offer some crazy whip, and while this coaster looks good, I don't think that it'll beat Montu for me, and I definitely don't think it'll beat Hulk either. This ride looks like Kumba, but if you made the black fruit tree a human and subject him to some gamma radiation. This ride looks super unique and super photogenic over the water, and talking about whippy inversions, this definitely doesn't skip out with this whip game either. That launch into the Zero G Roll looks nuts, and while I'm all for huge inversions, I gotta say this is one of the most graceful looking Cobra Rolls I've ever seen. The helix looks nuts, and the second half doesn't seem to be lacking either. Ah yes, staying in the same park, we have to talk about the most expensive roller coaster of all time. Talk about pure fun. This coaster looks beyond real with the on-ride theming, the trains, 7 launches, spike, backwards launch, drop track, 12 train ops. I could honestly get lost in this layout for days. This coaster is one of the few that honestly could be worth the trip to Florida for me, just for the experience alone. No ride I've been on to date has this type of theming and the consistency of theming alone. I have nothing to complain about with this coaster, and I'm dying to take a ride on it. Going back to SeaWorld again, we gotta talk about that 1-2 punch B&M game they got going on. Kraken looks really cool, and will probably be top 3 for me with the floorless coasters I've been on. It's been too long since I've been on these classic floorless coasters, and it definitely looks super unique. The straight drop looks nothing like Raging Bull level, but I still hold on with a little hope for it. Even though this layout is pretty repetitive when talking about B&M and their loopers, I think the second half is really where this could pull through for me. The second loop looks great in the trench, and that corkscrew looks beyond whippy. I am totally ready for this to be my new number 1 B&M hyper. I mean, after the disappointment of Candemonium, this looks like a great new gen hyper from them. While the second half does look to lack maybe just a little bit, I cannot deny that the first half looks sweet. The The first overbank looks great over the water, and I have to mention the 5-second floater hill. The speed hill also looks like it hauls, and I can only pray that the mid-course doesn't hit too hard. Okay, we're done with the side dishes of Florida. Let's get to the friggin' prime cuts of steak here. Now, Florida has quite the coaster collection, and I argue that it's up there with PA, Ohio, Virginia, and probably even California. But these two coasters alone probably put Florida over the top, not only for the best 1-2 punch, but probably the best coaster collection out of any state. And in the end, I don't even know which coaster is going to be better. Let's start with Velocicoaster, just because I'm going to be getting on it first. This looks like the best launch coaster in the world at the moment, and a coaster that has gotten hyped up so much even before it was built. Heck, even before the construction broke ground, this was already being hyped up, beyond belief. This honestly looks like Taiga on steroids, and I'm all for it. Now, here's the thing with Velocicoaster. Other than the first two elements in the entire second half, I don't really know what the layout looks like. I mean, you might be asking yourself how. But if you think about it, the theming and the rockwork really hides the sequencing of this coaster, and I'm not one of those guys who sits there with the POV on repeat trying to memorize every single layout I possibly can. But for the elements I do know about, you bet I'm going to talk about them. The first two inversions look like they give some good hang time in the front and some insane whip exiting them in the back. And I think that's all because of the supersized trains. After that, the second rolling launch doesn't look too great, but this top hat is funky. But I'm pumped for it though. I don't know what about it. It just looks super proportionate to itself, but in my mind it screams Intamin Blitz, for sure. After that, you go directly into a stall. I do think this is a weird first element right after the top hat. This will be the second stall I've ever been on. I'm super excited, although this does seem to be one of the more polarizing stalls among the community. After that is the wave turn, and this thing just looks absolutely nuts. Then yada yada yada, Mosasaurus roll tries to kill you, and bam! Right over. Okay. Let's talk about Iron Gwazi before we compare and see which one I think will be better. Gwazi seems to be the crown jewel of the last decade. It has a little bit of everything in it. Some old stuff, some new stuff, some classic stuff, and things that probably shouldn't even exist. This is like the last of Alan, and everything he has left went into this coaster. Now, I am very aware of this layout, and while it would be a waste of our time to predict what everything feels like, I think talking about the coaster in general will suit me better. First off, I'm super excited for this drop, not only because it's beyond vertical, but because it does this little twisty thing at the bottom. It's gonna be friggin' nuts. The next notable element for me is the wave turn, and this thing gets praised like it's the only wave turn to ever exist. Now, I've been on Elrod, and that wave turn feels like Skyrish's drop but sideways, and the fact that this one is supposed to put that one to shame, I can't even comprehend. Actually, no. The thing I can't comprehend is the fact that this coaster has two wave turns back to back. This is something no one will ever understand. Mr. Shoki, you have a beautiful friggin' mind. Gwazi also features a stall. Now, I've never experienced an RMC stall, so you bet I'm pumped for this. So you may have noticed I haven't talked about one of the elements, and well, it's for a good reason. This probably shouldn't even exist, and the fact that it does makes my mind go numb. Like, Alan, what were you on at 3 in the morning thinking that something like this would be okay? I truly don't know how to feel about this, and well, this is probably my most anticipated element of the year. Okay, after briefly going over both coasters, it kind of seems like I'm favoring Gwazi, and as I write this script, I also feel like I'm favoring Gwazi too. And honestly, I don't know how or why. I can't do Velocicoaster like that, and to be fair, I'm more hyped for Velocicoaster than I am for Gwazi. But I think I know why it seems like I'm favoring Gwazi, and let me take a shot and try and explain it to you. I have been following the creation of Velocicoaster even before the park announced it. Like, someone in the community said that they needed to replace the Discovery Center with a Dino coaster, and boom, a new rumor picked up like wildfire. Then, I remember the day over COVID when somebody spotted black track that was double-spined Intamin track outside of Islands. This was crazy. The same track style as Skyrush and I-305 was now sitting at Islands. It is an understatement to say that I and everybody in the community was beyond excited to see a coaster that was now confirmed, but also a coaster that was confirmed to be one of the most aggressive and intense models on the market was now going to Islands. So Velocicoaster had my attention for quite some time, and now that I will be experiencing it for the first time, it still blows my mind. But the hype around Gwazi is there for me too. Well, maybe just a little bit. This coaster was teased, and I originally thought, oh, this is kinda cool, but I was ultimately upset that they didn't go for a Mobius loop coaster like Twisted Colossus. Now, mind you, this was early stages of RMC Gwazi. Then they released a layout, and it looked crazy, and then it never opened. I mean, for a coaster that was teased during Steve's opening year, and then finally opened this year, almost 4 years after the coaster was confirmed, that's rough. I mean, this coaster had been out for so long that the OG render of the coaster didn't even have the steel truss lift hill yet. It was still a traditional lift hill. This thing is ancient by the time it opened, and I guarantee you that from the time span of 2018 to 2022, there was a period of time where you forgot this coaster even existed. Don't lie to me. We all forgot it existed for a second. You know it's true. It's only when it opened, the hype train really started to pick up again, and it was bigger than before. Meanwhile, Velocicoaster over here was put up in less than a year and we didn't even know it existed. But this still begs the question, what do I like better? I don't know. I mean, come on. You're asking me to pick one? Okay. Hear me out. Velocicoaster has held the hype for me, but since I don't know like 25% of the layout, I can't be excited for things I don't even know exist. Then there's Gwazi, which after opening 2 years later than expected, it blows up once again, bringing more hype than it even had before. Gwazi gets me excited because I can compare it to other RMCs I've been on, and that's the reason why I think I praise it so much. It looks to be an absolute powerhouse with a stacked layout. But an apex predator of a coaster that has a stacked layout and theming? Now that's really something. Today's shout out goes to Roblox Applesauce. If you guys would like a shout out, leave a comment down below, and if I like it, I'll be sure to feature you guys in the next Coaster Talk episode. With all that being said, if you enjoyed today's video, be sure to leave a comment down below, letting me know what you think of the coasters down south, and what will ultimately be better, Gwazi or Velocicoaster. With all that being said, I'll see you guys in the next one.